What is going on, guys? Welcome to the inaugural episode of Invest with Instincts. And I thought I'd start off with a banger. Somebody on Twitter who has reached recently, I assume, has reached 10,000 followers, is making a name for himself in the financial Twitter space, the macro space, the liquidity space, whatever you want to call it. We got two names, I guess. Global Flows is the Twitter handle. Capital Flows is the name. What's going on? How are you doing today?
Hey James, I'm doing well. Happy to be on here and chatting with you.
Wow, you doxed me right away, huh? Just kidding. I'm out there. I'm out there in the streets. I don't know
You
what's
have,
gonna happen,
you have more of your personal life on Twitter than most people.
That's true. I'm trying to pull back on that. Maybe just put up the things that people like and leave certain things out, because who knows what's going to happen as shit hits the fan in the coming years, right? It is the fourth turning after all.
Everything is going to fall apart next year.
Okay, is that a call? Is that
Oh,
a call?
that's oh no, it's a certainty. We all know this is going to
Certainty.
happen.
There's been a lot of certainties in the past year or two.
I
So
know the unquestionable, confidence in making calls. It's been
yeah,
good.
pretty amazing. Um, it's been one of my favorite things is seeing people I respect be wrong. It's like
Yeah,
sad and happy at the same time. You know, it's just
totally.
it's fun. But so unless you've been living under a rock, you guys have probably seen this guy popping around your Twitter feed with pretty sick insights, in-depth research, clearly just nonstop work, adding to a Substack or at this point just a website or whatever, publishing kind of reports all the time, diving into FX, bonds, stocks, you name it. What's the deal, man? Like, how is this the way you dove into markets, to dissect everything and use Bloomberg and all of that? How did you get into that methodology? Is it a background? Is it just something you find interesting? Kind of explain that for us.
Yeah, I mean, I think the majority of it just came from reading a lot, trial and error, and then just asking questions. I mean, I don't, that wasn't always the way that I kind of thought about the world. I guess, I think I did pretty poorly in school and just kind of before I was in markets and things like that. So there was never kind of, I was never like the genius kid growing up that everyone looked at and they were like, wow, he's going to go so far. I was basically the opposite. So I'm, I think, some of it came from what I was doing previously. I think a lot of things changed in my life. I had a lot of spiritual things change in my life when I was like 18, 19. And then I started reading a lot after that because I never read books before that. And then spent some time studying languages, linguistics, theology, kind of like philosophy, a lot of things along those lines. And then happened to land a job in markets, I guess kind of maybe by accident, maybe not. And I've always just kind of read a lot, done a lot of source research, and tried to really get to kind of the underlying kind of aspects of how things work. So yeah, I think a lot of it has just been trial and error and then not stopping and not just kind of being satisfied with like a surface understanding of things.
Yeah, that seems to be pretty common from what I've learned about you over time, is that you just kind of have a relentless pursuit for education and constantly learning and things like that. And that, I mean, we've talked about this before, how the world is in a very cool way giving anybody the opportunity to monetize the way they do things, no matter what, you know, monetize the things they like and the way they do that. And this has kind of been a really cool way for you to take your ability to learn and to research in an area you really like and to put that out there for other people. Um, so, I mean, this aligns with you as a person as well, right? Like it kind of is all driven you to this point, and it's clearly taking off because of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was some. I think I started the Substack and Twitter account at the beginning of the year, or maybe in Marchish, because I had some compliance things before where I couldn't publish research and share thoughts publicly and things like that. But I think it's just been very interesting because I've always written a lot of research for kind of other individuals privately. I guess I've been writing research just nonstop for just years now. But it's always been something that has been in one sense, a means to an end, right? Like I think all of these things are a decision to accomplish a goal, right? I don't necessarily think I do have like a desire to know things and I'm disciplined and I'm focused, but I think those all, go toward a goal, right? I don't know if I'm just naturally disciplined just to get up and do stuff every single day. Like I'm always going toward a goal. So I think that's kind of how I think about it.
Yeah, and I just heard this thing yesterday that I thought about you is that it was a unique way of looking at discipline, and that's how often people think they need discipline to do something over and over, and it's applauded, and it's this grind, this hustle, this discipline equals freedom, blah blah blah. This person's take was that when somebody feels pulled to do something, where they've found the thing they're best at and most excited to do and intrigued about and all that, that discipline is not actually a problem at that point. In
Hmm.
fact, it goes to the point where stepping back is actually the problem, right? Pulling
Right.
that person away from the thing they're called to do. It's like, you know, athletes that don't ever want to take a rest day, or traders that are maybe over trading because, guilty, right?
Yeah.
Like where
Yep. All of
where
us.
sometimes, yeah, you're just so deep into the game that actually pulling out and almost getting rid of some discipline and just being like, I need to step away for a second. And I feel like with you, you're kind of more along those lines where like discipline's not that's not even a thing for you. That's just who you are.
I guess so. Yeah. I mean, we've had a bit of conversations about this, but I think a lot of the way that when I get up in the morning, I just go do what I do, right? I think it's just like a habit now,
Mm-hmm.
right? And, habits control like the majority of our lives, right? So I think a lot of things that have like framed how I think about motivation and discipline has actually come from, you know, the coach Tim Grover. He did performance coaching for like Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, all those guys. And I read a couple of his books and I found them really helpful because you basically see that like all of these guys work so incredibly hard just to get a spot at the table. Like that's all. Like they just got a spot at the table. They just get the opportunity to compete. And they have to just be completely disciplined in every area of their life. But it's like they just want to win so bad that they don't think about all that kind of like pain in the interim, right? Like it's there. It's something you have to, push past. But I think that overwhelming desire to win is just so great that that's the thing that you're focused on so much more than kind of the short-term pain.
Sure. There's a bigger game at play, and the ability to look through that part of the process, the pain, the whatever, it's going to be there, and you embrace it, kind of part of the journey, right? It's not going to be
Yeah.
linear.
Well, it's kind of like the book you were reading, the Infinite Game one, right? That kind of
Hmm.
connects into it, right?
Yes. And that like the I mean, the grand takeaway from that for me was to always approach anything you're doing from an infinite mindset, to where there is no end game. So it kind of plays with that idea of like a goal, in that
Hmm.
sometimes that's not the best way for people to look at things. The goal should be more or less to keep playing the game.
Yeah.
Um, in which it's tough because like you always are setting goals to achieve things which can provide drive and motivation, but then you also want to focus on just embracing the process. And I don't know, it was just an interesting way where perspective flips can help you have more longevity in the
Yep.
space that you're in. um But yeah, so do you feel like that your approach has been the best way for you to express yourself in financial markets? Do you like trading or investing yourself personally? Are you leaning more into the research side? Like, where do you see for yourself, or are you doing both? Like, where do you see the pocket for you now, and then maybe like looking out more into the future?
Yeah, I guess a lot of so I kind of have a lot of this, theoretically I have a plan for it, right? I have a lot of stuff planned out, but I would say I have pretty clear processes for trading and for research, and they both intertwine a lot. So I don't really, I don't know if I would say it's 50-50, but it's kind of like, this trading process and this kind of research process. The way I think about research is it's just the manner in which you identify and interpret signal to noise, right? Like that's just how I think about research, right? You're trying to obtain information that helps you, view the world in a unique way so that you can execute and, have some type of superior performance. So I guess when I kind of think about that entire conversation of, what is the best way to kind of like invest or like how does that individually connect with me? I guess I think about kind of that whole nature versus nurture thing. Like what is or what are the kind of common things that I have with everyone else, right? I would say just like stuff like, patience, right? Like that's not something it's like, oh, that's in your DNA, man. You're just so much more patient. Like I think that's just like a muscle you develop, right? Whereas there's kind of some more individual idiosyncratic things that are much more on the individualistic side as opposed to just like we all have this. But I think what happens in like our experiences growing up, we or maybe we have an experience trading where we think like, oh, I'm a value guy or I'm this type of trader, that type of trader because of an experience that we have. And so I guess I've always tried to think like, okay, I can't always just trust my experience. So how can I kind of think about building some type of timeless process that does align with like just who we are as people, like, trying to be patient or disciplined, but then also kind of like connected with my, individualistic kind of edge and disposition toward things. So I guess I've tried to really balance those because I think it's easy to kind of say something like, oh, I'm not a math person or like I'm not a literature person or whereas like I think we can learn anything, right? Like I think any of us like can learn whatever we want, right? It might be like, more difficult for some people, but I think I can figure anything out almost. Um, but it kind of comes back to, your goals, right? Because those whatever you're learning or your skills are, they're always connected with some goal, right? It's always subordinate to that.
Yeah, just to interject, like I heard something the other day about skill sets and how, how you hear something about like soft skills and hard skills, or like hard skills are just like easily measurable skills that you can learn along the way. And then a soft skill, a lot of people will think it's like, oh, it's in your DNA or whatever. But like you
Yeah,
said, it's more of just a hard to measure thing that might include a lot of different things. So like the example I heard was, oh, I'm not like socially aware or like good in social situations, right? And somebody could think, oh, that's a soft skill, that person's just really good with people, but really it's just hard to measure. And if you were to take that person who is not super socially aware and you were to say like, okay, step one is you're going to smile when anybody walks through the door and you're going to greet them, and then step two is like you're not going to interrupt them when they're speaking to you. Like step three is you're going to like look them in the eye when you're saying something and you're going to have like more concise points. And then you start putting all that together and working those muscles, all of a sudden that soft skill becomes more attainable, right?
yep,
To somebody that thought, oh, I could never be that. Um, so it seems
yeah,
like you play with all of those and you're confident in your ability to like learn those skills, which I think everybody can take away from, right? That if
right.
they want to go one way or the other, um, it's all attainable. It just might be different time horizons to do that.
Yeah, well, I think to your point there, if that person just naturally thinks I don't have the ability to do this, right? Or this just is who I am. I just naturally don't have these abilities, right? That can be like a big barrier, right? Like, and then that's going to translate into other areas. Like if you just say like, oh, I'm just not a person who likes working out,
Mhm.
it's just like, well, you're going to be overweight and, fat, and you're not going to have these other benefits in your life, and
Whoa,
life
whoa,
expectancy
whoa!
is low.
Stop talking about me, buddy. Come on, hitting home.
But it like it it begins to but that I think that frames how you approach every aspect of life, because I mean the way that I think about it is like beliefs and ideas that you have, you can't silo them in your life, because it's like you can't just like have a fire in the closet and be like, I'm just going to close the closet door and like it's going to be fine in there and I'll keep it in the closet. It's like beliefs and desires and goals and everything, they seep into every area of your life, right? So you can't play the victim card over here and then expect to outperform
Mhm.
over here in this other domain.
Yeah, so it's a good argument for like the what one of the ways I try to live is trying to like minimize the amount of plates you're trying to spin, right? But
Hmm.
like try to spin them all somewhat efficiently because they all interact with each other, even if you don't think they do.
Yep.
Just to the smallest things, right? We go back to the small like Jordan Peterson type stuff years ago where he's like, make your bed, right?
Right.
Or like that stuff can seep into your trades. You don't
Yep.
think it does, but like the fire in the closet can impact anything really. You just don't, it's subconsciously happening.
Yep.
Um, just to move on. So like, it's really cool how you were to approach things. And I think a lot of people can ask themselves those questions too. Like, do they have those kind of limiting beliefs about themselves and how can they approach trying to break down those barriers? What are my hard skills? What are my soft skills? And maybe soft skills over here aren't even worth your time because they're not really of interest for you. But if it is an area that you want to get into, like there are ways to be able to do that over time.
Hmm.
Um, and as your following grows, right, and you're casting a wider net over a wider audience, this is something in the financial markets that I don't have to deal with, but somebody in your space might have to. It's like you're going to be dealing with people with all these different opinions and time horizons and way they learn things and way they take in things and whatever. Um, so like if their time horizons and their approach to markets don't align with you, how does that problem persist? And like how can they best use what you have to offer to help them? Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. I mean, just I think there's it's like this whole limitation of like communicating with people who have just like fundamentally different goals, right? It's how do we kind of find that common area where we can both add value to each other even though we have different goals, right? And I think the difficulty is when someone just tries to copy another person's goals, or someone tries to expect a person to conform to their goals, right? So like I'm writing a lot of research on like the Substack. Sometimes I'll share trades, sometimes I'll share views and things like that. And then, you know, um, sometimes it will, so there, I mean, there's like a bunch of people who just, I mean, have reached out, we've chatted a bunch, but that work at hedge funds, and or like on the institutional side, are just actively trading and they subscribe to the Substack. And I mean, it's just very interesting because they have a very different mindset about how they're reading my stuff. They find it very helpful, like informative, like valuable, right? And they're like, oh, I saw this view and that helped me over here because I fit this into how I think about this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, great. And then I'll have maybe someone else that maybe just is still trying to work through their framework or something like that. And they'll say like, oh, you said this and I did it in that I, tried to copy you in this way and then it didn't work. Why didn't your thing work? Right. And it's kind of interesting to me because it's we have different goals and abilities and ways to execute, right? Especially execution, because you can have right views and still,
Yeah.
have that wrong part of it. So I think a lot of it just has to do with just kind of having your own framework, like building that, like you can pull from others, but then really being able to have a system or a process where you like intake information and then feed it to how you view things, which I think actually I feel like you're really good at that because we'll talk a lot on like all the different narratives going on or all the different things that you're seeing. I feel like you're much better. I'm better at that for data than you are, but then you're better at that with like narratives than I am, right?
Maybe,
Like,
maybe. It's
yeah,
just I think I used to not be, right? And it took copy pasting a lot of trades or ideas that I thought were so brilliant and made so much sense
yeah,
to and losing on them to make me force me to get a better process about taking those in and you kind of when to act.
mm,
Um and maybe that's just I think like anything in trading is like time in the chair.
totally.
As long as you have time in the chair and you don't go broke, like they're like the lessons you learn overall. And I'm getting a little bit better personally at being like, okay, I see that I can see why that would be a great idea. And then
Hmm.
before I actually do anything, I like sit back, take a breath and be like, okay, if I were to do this, how would I do it? How would that align with my goals? Do I have the capital? What percentage would it be? How would I enter? How would I
Hmm.
exit? Like what things do I have to pay attention to that like capital flows is paying attention to with this trade? And if a change occurs, am I going to be able to learn that information quickly and exit or not?
Right.
Like all these things like I think is important for people that are following you, especially to think about in their own right. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And I think that that almost goes back to the kind of responsibility and mindset previously, because at the end of the day, you're the one that's making the money. Like, I feel like you kind of almost want to copy other people's trades sometimes because if it goes bad, you can kind of blame them and not yourself.
Yeah.
And yeah, in reality, I mean, I don't really know how much. I think I talk with a lot of traders and we share ideas, but I don't know how much I really implement other people's ideas these days where I'm like, oh, let me just take your idea and I'm just going to put it on. I can't remember
Yeah.
the last time I did that. Maybe once in a while, but I think for the most part, I try to come up with, my mindset is coming up with my own stuff because that's how I know I understand it.
Yeah. And it's just easier to take responsibility that way. You can really like it's a shitty feeling when it's one of the worst feelings when you copy paste a trade by somebody and you lose and you look back and you're just like, you know, deep down that it's your fault, but
Right.
you're going to cast the blame anyway. Right.
Totally. Yep.
And you need to really have that tough conversation with yourself to be like, no, no, no. Like,
Yep.
um, that one's on you. You made the decision to like offload that responsibility to somebody else.
Yep.
Um, so when it comes to this style of research and the things you've been looking at over the past few months, like what what asset classes and things have you found that this has been fitting the best for you, this type of research, the things you look at? I know you do a lot of like look into bonds and the yield curve and everything right now. Is that what best kind of aligns with your efforts these days?
Yeah, I think right now it's fixed income and FX. I think those are the kind of the two main things I'm focusing on. And my my goal is I'm in the process. I mean, I have a lot of iterations of systematic strategies on bonds and FX, but I'm really trying to pull together a lot more, you know, uh, you know, models and resources, and I'm trying to learn some more stuff about some AI and machine learning to kind of develop them a little bit more because I really want to make an amazing strategy that's truly world class in bonds and FX, and then equities as well, and then maybe some just have it be able to trade in a really high level way. So I think because I have that goal, and that's a multi-year goal, right? That's not
Oh,
something
you
I
can't
expect.
figure out how to trade the world's toughest markets in a month? Okay.
I've actually, it's actually funny. I think years ago, like I created like lists of like every single thing I needed to learn. And I knew that there was other stuff I would add to it eventually. But like I just like I knew like after I had this like list of things I needed to understand the market and the hundreds of books I needed to read on it, Like I just knew, I'm just like, yeah, this is going to take years. Like
Yeah.
I'm going to dedicate like, over a decade of my life to this, which is like, a decade of like a lot of discipline. And that's super difficult for people to commit to. But yeah, I think in terms of asset classes, mainly bonds and FX, some equities, a little bit less. But there's something about bonds and FX that just clicks with me, and that makes a ton of sense to me um, when I'm trading them.
Yeah. A quick note on that 10-year outlook is like, what's funny is people end up working in a career for over 10 years, but had they started out with that plan and maybe a better like execution along the way, they could probably have figured out a way to get way past where they are after 10 years, right? If you just waddle away for 10 years, you might look back and be like, Jesus Christ, I've been in here 10 years.
Yeah,
And I haven't really reached the goals I wanted. But if you were to have started looking backwards, like I'm going to dedicate 10, 15 years to this thing. What do I need to start doing now to get to like the peak of that? And you would have been, you know, same amount of time, but maybe in a way different place.
yep,
Right. And you're kind of seeing the fruits of that starting, right?
right,
Like,
yeah,
and you've read countless books, and you just can't get to a deep level of knowledge without executing a lot of trades, reading a lot of shit, taking a lot of opinions, learning what worked, what didn't work. It's one of the most like long, painful journeys.
yep,
It's very difficult.
yeah. I mean, I think like what you said earlier is just I think this is something that you said a while back and it just stuck with me. But it's just like the poker analogy, like you just got to keep your seat at the table.
Yeah.
And that really like hit home for me because I feel like you never want to risk your seat at the table. You want to take risks, but you never risk your seat at the table
Yep.
because you keeping your seat at the table allows you to keep learning. It allows you to keep improving and adapting. And if I take everything that I have to zero, right? All of us have taken accounts to zero before, but like if I take everything I have to zero and I'm not able to just fund my carry of life to improve more, then I have to go get a job somewhere else. And then I begin to create this reflexive feedback loop where, okay, I don't have as much time to spend learning and I have to go work at this other job. And
And the
then it just can,
psychological aspect of it, right? You might be so
oh,
down
yeah.
on yourself to be like, well, I wasn't meant to be there anyway.
Oh,
That's a
for
whole nother.
sure. Oh, for sure. I mean, that's huge too. I know I had someone message me the other day about like taking a break. They were like, oh, I'm gonna take a 6 months off of like trading and other stuff like this because I have life stuff. How do I just like keep up and not lose my edge or something like that? I
Mhm.
was just like, I honestly don't know I don't have the answer to that because in my mind, not that it's deterministic, but like trait, like a lot of these things there are transferable skills, but they are perishable.
Yeah.
Like just like playing a sport, like if you stop playing for a couple of years, like you're gonna lose stuff, right? There is perishability in that in a lot of skill sets.
Yeah. Yeah. Keeping your seat at the table is huge. And especially for somebody like that, like if they have a lot going on in life, like if they just blow an account up, they're gonna take years to get back into it. It's like
Yeah.
I think about all the crypto guys that came in 2021, right? I still like crypto. I'm still in crypto. I still have a bag of crypto. I have conviction in crypto, but like I kept my seat at the table, right? I didn't blow all my shit on NFTs and shit coins along the way, and
Hmm.
just get to the point where both financially and mentally I was just like, F this space, I'm out.
Yep.
Right. Because when would I want to get back in? Well, probably if and when there's another potential upside to that space, like it would probably be late. Right. And I'm just
Right.
going to make another mistake.
Hmm.
Um, I want to at some point create a little image of like a trading um career path, because I feel like trading,
Hmm.
investing, whatever you want to call it, because I feel like it always starts off with like this dip, and then like if there's a zero axis, like you start like losing. Like I feel
Right.
like you just always have to lose. Like if you have a hot start, I often think you'll probably give it back or more before learning the lessons and stuff like that. So let's just say outside of an anomaly,
Yep.
you are starting down and then you're hopefully ramping up, scaling, taking off, whatever. But there's this point where like maybe you're kind of getting it a little bit, where I feel like a lot of people lose their seat.
Yep.
Right. That they're kind of going along. Maybe they've had some wins, some losses, some wins and losses. And then at one point, something just triggers them to where they go all in on something.
Yep.
Right. They're just frustrated about time passing, nothing happening, a couple losses. And if they had just stuck with the plan and kind of waiting for fat pitches and stuck with like learning incrementally, like
Yep.
eventually it would take off for them, but they fucking blow up
Yep.
before they get that spot.
Hmm.
You know, and then like we were saying, then they're out emotionally, financially for quite some time before getting
Right.
back into it.
Totally.
And blaming other people, right?
Right.
When really,
Right.
again, going back, that was their fault.
Right.
They did that to themselves.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
what's so interesting, I'm this is something I'm just kind of realizing now, is like in trading, you always have this capital downside, right? Where you actually lose money.
Mm-hmm.
And that's your downside. It's interesting because I've kind of started some other businesses and for, with some other people and some other projects that I'm in. And it's very interesting because the downside is literally our time.
Yep.
And it's so different. And it's really weird because I'm like, okay, well, where's the downside? Where are we going to lose money? And they're just like, well, it's just the time right now. Like, we have a couple $100 for this or that, or, some small expenses, but it's just like our time. And that's kind of crazy to me because trading, a lot of businesses don't have a lot of downside in terms of like capital, like trading does, right? Where like the downside in a lot of other businesses is time, and I think the capital requirement can be much lower. It all depends, right? But for trading, you need to have like this upfront capital that would be considerable just to be able to fund the carry that you have in life.
Yep. Yeah, not easy. And then for me, it relates to time anyway. Like the reason I get frustrated, I'm going through a stretch where I'm down on a quarter right now for the first time in God knows how long, 7 years, something,
Yep.
right? And it's not the money, it's the time, right? It's the time that I feel like I'm wasting, right? Because we have this idea of like linearity, right? And I should be progressing over time. And I get frustrated more about the idea of going backwards over time. Right? That's the most frustrating part for me. And I think that's what deep down, that's for a lot of us, right? We want it now. Like we want instant gratification. But again, like switching the perspective to a long-term outlook, which I try to do, is to be like, I need to zoom out. What are my big goals here? What is my timeline? Do I really need to be up on the quarter right now for it to really decide who I am as a trader, decide what matters right now in this trade? No, right? Like it's always like coming back to those things that are not super easy. I mean, I'm telling you, I feel for the people who like will blow up their accounts and stuff, but I feel like they something gets them over that ledge and they lose the seat.
Yep.
Right. Which is why bringing it back to you, I think this is such a cool thing with the Capital Flows account and the Substack and everything, is because you get to express your trades and your execution personally, and then you get to create and educate, and along the way during that portion of time you're earning some passive income, you're helping people, you're fulfilling yourself. So it's a little bit easier to maybe be patient because you don't necessarily feel like you're wasting time. So
right.
Kind of,
I think that's a fair way to put it. I think it's been a new experience to kind of share what I know, because I think I did a tweet about this, but it's just like the friend I talked to who's been in the industry for 20 years. He was just like, yeah, man, I'm still struggling with imposter syndrome. And he's like, amazing,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of like always easy to think about that. And I think it's just been cool to just share what I know and just be open and honest with people. And I think also too is just explaining, I think a lot of the stuff I'm trying to share is trying to give people the fishing pole as opposed to the fish. And
Wow, you just butchered that. I mean, I
How does
get
that?
it,
How
but
does that?
man, you just really butchered it, huh? Here's a
See,
fishing pole. Good luck. No, I got you.
see,
Teach a
this is
man
the
to
thing with
fish.
myself and James. I'm horrible at jokes, but then
Terrible at jokes.
James always comes in clutch. Always.
I don't need, I almost, guys, I almost don't bother with this guy anymore because I'll just lay out the most simple joke and hit it just right over the head, right? As he's deep in like a studying cycles book or whatever. It's just flying over left and
And
right.
then I'll throw out some really lame joke, and he'll just give me this look like, really, man?
Anyways. All right,
But
let's wrap
yeah,
this up. We're at about 35 minutes, so I'll give you one chance to, if there's any advice, you got people coming, following you all the time, probably just learning about what you're doing. Maybe they're just seeing a trade for the first time or how you operate. How do you suggest people kind of sift through the noise of not only you, but Twitter and kind of become like a better version of themselves as an investor, a trader, a learner, things like that?
yeah. I th I think the one thing I would say is the fundamental thing that you need is time, and you want to make your learning and success inevitable. And I think a lot of that goes back to just having the expectation that it takes years to just read and think and go. Like, you need to go through the trial and error process of reading price action, taking losses, and things like that. And then I think, and then having the expectation that after you go through all of that and you get to a place of like competence and skill, that just gives you a seat at the table to compete.
Hmm.
And then that's when like the real test begins.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of having that mindset and just saying like, I'm going to do this for 10 years and I'm just going to be, voracious in everything I do and make my success inevitable because time is on my side. I think that's just a key way to align your life and to set up your life. Even if that means you don't have optimal consumption, for a decade or for 5 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And so that's the one thing that I still think about for obtaining that level of success.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to end it. Time is good and bad. It's undefeated and wrecking everybody in the end, but it's
Yep.
good to have a long-term perspective because there's a lot of time in life. And if we've learned anything, it's very rare that things come quickly and easily,
Yep.
especially in this realm. You see people get things wrong all the time who have had very illustrious careers, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay, Capital Flows. Go follow him at Global Flows. Easy name. Anybody you want to shout out before we go? Anybody that's been really nailing it out there that we should try to talk to sometime or
To
give
have
a
on
follow?
the podcast,
Just whatever.
or just to
Could
kind of
be to follow. Could be that. Who knows?
let's see. That's good. So someone I've been chatting with a lot more is Paper Alpha on Twitter. We go back and forth in DMs a bit, and then we've done a couple spaces together. Really experienced, knowledgeable guy. Let me pull up it's Paper _ALFA on Twitter. Really good guy. So I would encourage everyone to follow him and check him out. And I appreciate you letting me come on here and we could kind of bounce some ideas back and forth and chat. So I think this is really cool.
Yeah, no problem. Hopefully, people. I like talking a little bit deeper about this stuff, and I think this was a great example of that. I think it's a deep game. I don't think it's easy. I think it goes very inward. That's kind of the idea behind this podcast is figuring out, who you are, how you like to invest, what your goals are, and then how to take in everything surrounding you in this world, and then executing in that kind of alignment with you. And I think you're a good example of that. So shout out to you. 40 minutes. We went over time, man. We just
Sorry.
We knew we
I
were
know.
gonna do
Too
it.
many good thoughts. Too many good
Because I had to
thoughts.
explain all these jokes to you along the way. You know.
That's true. It's my fault. I take responsibility.
Okay, guys. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks for listening. See you later.